Welcome to my analysis of the financial and educational performance for states before and after the COVID-19 outbreak. In this analysis, I will examine how these sectors for each state have been affected by the pandemic and politics. My name is Craig Little. I'm an Army combat veteran currently working as an export flight agent and seeking a career as a data analyst. During this presentation, I will commence by presenting the sources of my data, followed by showcasing the Python code I developed to generate map plot graphs. Additionally, I will provide an illustrative example of a SQL query I utilized to merge datasets. Finally, I will conclude the presentation by sharing data visualizations created using Tableau to support and enhance my analysis. I will begin by showing my sources, which are located at the bottom of the slide. I got my voting data from presidency.ucsb.edu, education data from nationsreportcard.gov, and finally my income data from justice.gov. Here I'd like to show how I utilize Python in this analysis by using pandas and matplotlib to create plot graphs. I was able to indicate the voting percentage for each state with a dotted and color coordinated line indicating how each state voted in 2020. With the candidate specific lines in place, I then plotted for each value relative to the state's education scorecard percentage. I then color coordinated the state's names on the x-axis for who they voted for and finished by placing a legend at the top center of the graph. I use SQL to merge multiple datasets together. This query is one of many similar used to rename columns and join datasets. I was fortunate enough my analysis is based on the USA, with states as a common value to be used as a primary key for joins. I was then able to simply sort my values by voting percentage and limit the output to 25 and name the output according to the state's political affiliation. These joins created the perfect dataset for utilization in Tableau. This first data visualization is showing us how each state compares to the rest when analyzing the nation's report card education valuation. In this comparison, we will be using test results from the 4th grade. Each state is graded upon test results out of a possible 500 points and converted into a percentage. The graph above shows how each state voted for each candidate in the 2020 election. Red dotted line for Donald Trump, the Republican candidate, and blue dotted line for Joe Biden, the Democrat candidate. Each colored line across the center represents a year and what percentage each state was graded for that specific subject. The bar graph spanning the bottom of the slide is an interactive chart allowing for filtering of each political party and for which year and subject the relative state was graded. We can see that there has clearly been a decrease in testing scores across the country after the COVID-19 pandemic. While there isn't a large variation between Democrat and Republican states, it does seem that the further in one political direction you go, the more erratic the results become. My next slide will outline the variance in single earner income before and after the pandemic relative to each state and political affiliation. Again, the top chart was plotted with values specific to each state income per year and sorted by how they voted in the 2020 election. There's a clear bias toward the Democrat states for larger income per earner. We can see that the Republican states not only had a lower single earner income per state, but also the more conservative a state becomes, the less overall money an individual is expected to make. We can see that not only were the wages lower the more conservative a state was before the pandemic, but they also continued the trend after the pandemic by having a much lower increase per earner after the pandemic. The last slide shows a close-up of the results for education and single earner income per political party before and after the pandemic. The Democrats started off with a slightly higher overall grade average between math and reading in 2019, only to trail the Republicans in 2022 after the pandemic. This could possibly be due to the pandemic policies being more strict in Democrat states that led to a negative effect on education. Though both Democrats and Republicans alike were negatively affected by the pandemic, it seems the Democrat states were slightly worse at maintaining effective education strategies through the more restrictive pandemic policies. The bottom right chart shows the difference between Democrat and Republican average single earner income per year and the total change to that average from 2019 to 2022. The Democrats again start with a lead with over $7,000 per single earner on average, but unlike education, they not only keep the lead after the pandemic, they add another $5,600 per earner per year, beating out the Republican states' average of approximately $4,800. Democrat states seemingly employ more tech and remote capable jobs, allowing employees to remain engaged at work, while Republican states employ more jobs requiring on-site attendance, which may have led to the lesser average increase per single earner income. This concludes the presentation. Thank you for your time, and may your data-driven endeavors lead to continued success.